the formula is.
Anyone know what this,
Deciding people have been on too many phone calls. Basically, great event, right? It's a lot great event.
and we all
And we
know
all
this,
know this.
right? We all know that people go out and they buy stuff without any knowledge, training, experience with it, and they try to use it under dire circumstances, Avi gear being the one that comes to mind. The gear doesn't matter if you don't know how to use it, right? And you can do a lot more really know your stuff. We're going to help you have a great day, but we can't read minds, and we didn't make anyone file a medical form. All right. Any questions on that? I am sure that I'm missing a couple people off this list, but it took an army of people to put this on. They all deserve a round of applause, because this is there's a bunch of station leaders. People put in a lot of time, a lot of calls, a lot of emails, a lot of work, a lot of prep. Make sure you acknowledge those people. Okay, you guys got to learn to whistle. I mean, whisper, not whistle. All right, special thanks. Where's Mike LaPierre? If you're not, there he is. Okay. And if you're a member of Nordic Nutmeg, colors. All right, there you go. Again, these guys go out of their way to make the arrangements, to sign contracts, to survey the area, whatever it takes. Anyone who's ever put on one of these events knows there's a lot of work that goes on. So special thanks, and Mike as the lead really took most of it. But Cal Goldsmith, our Eastern Division Director.
Morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Is that all working? Okay, very good. Thanks for having me. I'm sorry I'm not there. I'm actually at my refresher today. We're starting in about a half an hour, so that's why I need to get on so early with you folks. First of all, thank you very much for doing this, for participating, for doing this training. Eastern Division is one of the most innovative divisions, if not the most innovative division in the National Ski Patrol. We do things that other divisions don't do or couldn't do if they had to. A good example of that is this conference. Another example is the certified boot camp that happened last weekend, or 3 weekends ago up in Maine. That was an absolutely unbelievable event as well. So we do some great stuff, and I just want to thank you all for taking time to be here and do this. Just a few things I wanted to share with you about what are going on at the national level. You've heard that we've got a change in leadership in process. Chris Castillion left, and I think that was a philosophical difference with the board that drove that. I was very sorry to see him go. I thought he was a really good guy, and he would have been, if he had stayed, would have been very good for the National Ski Patrol, but he was hired in a certain role, and that role no longer fit the needs or the desires of the board for how they wanted to govern. So it was a parting of the ways that most likely had to happen sooner or later, but I was sorry to see it happen. The board is embarking on its own search. We're not hiring a search firm this time to find national leadership. That cost us a lot of money last time we did it. And they've put out the call. You've probably seen an email talking about the job description. That email has garnered so far some 70 candidates that have sent in resumes that are interested. They'd like a patroller to be the next executive director. They've got a few resumes from patrollers. So it's a possibility, but that's ongoing, and the search committee is working hard to try and evaluate those folks, and hope to have a new executive director in place before too much longer. In the meantime, the national staff and the executive group on the staff, which is Christy Ball, Myron Allen, Paul Kelly, and Rick Boyce as national chair, have been interviewing all the staff people and the directors at the national office. and they think that everybody is pretty solid in their position and understands what they're doing and understands that they are valued and that we want them to stay. So hopefully we don't see any turnover, further turnover in the national staff. Just a couple of updates on other things. You'll hear soon about the revamped senior program. The division directors were asked by the national chair to look at and kind of oversee a retake on the senior program. There's a rough draft that's being circulated now to all the division directors to look at. And then the final blueprint should be out to the divisions by December 5th. And hopefully we have an LMS module up for it by that same date, December 5th, and then senior candidates can start to use it. And so this is a beta test year. We're not doing it nationwide. There'll be certain regions within each division that will beta test this. So we're hoping, and the goal of the senior evaluation change, it's not just evaluation, the whole program. The goal is to simplify it a little bit. A lot of you are probably saying, what's wrong with the senior program? We like it just fine the way it is. That was kind of my take on it too, but there are other divisions that have a great deal of trouble with the senior program. For instance, the Northern Division they don't have enough instructors up in Montana to be able to put on a senior test the way the senior test is required to be run now. They also had a real problem with the on-snow testing requirement, although I think for the most part, we're going to be able to keep that in place. I certainly intend to keep it in the Eastern Division. But basically what we're doing is we're opening up the senior program, making it a little more flexible, allowing less staff to run the test and determining how that's going to be run. We're opening up to bike patrollers as well, more challenging scenarios. And I think the driving goal and where you test is you test under the same conditions that you patrol. And that's what the song that I've been singing. And I think it's taken hold, and hopefully that's the way it ends up happening. But it's to try and get a smaller pool of people to be able to run a test, and also be able to run tests for smaller groups of people without needing 20 people to do it. So you'll see that coming up soon. It's interesting. I haven't finished my review of the outline yet. I just actually started it, but we'll see. We're also, the DEI program is still pushing ahead. I had some interesting conversation when I was up at the boot camp, the certified boot camp, with some folks. People's attitude in some cases seems to be, why are you shoving DEI down our throats? In fact, that was a direct quote from somebody at the certified. And we started talking, and they thought that the focus of NSP's DEI effort is to try and get more people of color into the NSP, and that's certainly part of it. But it's also to treat the people within NSP, whoever you are, with equal respect across all the different folks that are here. And if you look at the survey that was done probably over a year ago now, but people were surprised by how many of our women members complained that they had been made to feel uncomfortable, or they had felt like they were being discriminated against or forced to do prove themselves beyond what other members had to do. And I know that's true. I've seen it. My wife is heavily involved. She was subjected to it a number of times coming up when she was an OET-TE. And that's a real problem for us. And we've got to acknowledge that we don't always treat women correctly within the NSP. And by that, I don't mean necessarily being overtly impolite to them, but I mean things like not allowing them the same degree of respect for their competence that everybody else, that the men in the organization have. And we've got to be sensitive to that. And we've got to start to understand that it is a problem. And part of what I'm doing at the national level with the DEI task force is trying to get together a training program to get our consultant to help us put together a training program for senior leadership that I can bring back to the divisions and have all the division leaders take it and bring it down to their region levels and then to the patrol levels. And the only way this is going to be successful is if leadership gets on board and says, yes, this is a problem. Yes, we need to rectify it. And part of the way you rectify it is just being aware that it exists. And a lot of people will tell me, and these folks did tell me that I was talking to at the boot camp, told me that they'd never seen any problem whatsoever. And of course, they were both men. And Paul Kelly and his wife, Susan, were sitting next to me, and Susan weighed in and said, well, then you're not looking. You're not seeing things that are happening right in front of you, and you're not aware of it. You need to be aware of it. And after some conversation, they both agreed that the two men we were talking to agreed that awareness is probably the biggest problem. Being aware of the fact that that there is a problem and being sensitive to it is the first step in being able to correct it. And I'm committed to having Eastern Division lead the way in that, like we do in most everything else. It's not just about diversity, it's about equity and inclusion as well. And we really need to do everything we can to improve the situation in our individual patrols. So you as leadership, that's why I'm haranguing you today on this. Your leadership in the Eastern Division, it's got to start with you. So please be aware. Go back and look at that survey that was done. It's on the national website, and look at some of the responses. It might surprise you. I've also had we've got this new LMS system that Dave Hemmendinger led the charge on from Eastern Division, along with Rick Boyce, and he did an amazing job. It's been well over a year, almost 2 years of effort for him to put it together. Of course, it has little hiccups now and then. Turns out it doesn't work well with Firefox as a web browser. Got to use other browsers than that. But for the most part, it's been pretty seamless. And unfortunately, there are certain members of the Eastern Division, and not a lot of them, but a few of them, who have chosen to get frustrated and respond to the national staff in a pretty demeaning, insulting, and sometimes aggressive way via email. And that is not tolerable. And we have a zero tolerance policy for that. And so again, as leadership, I'm asking you to make sure that when you hear people complaining about the LMS system, try and tamp it down, try and explain to them that they've got to call Dave Hemmendinger or call the national education staff. They will help them through it. And you should also explain to them that whenever they find a problem with the LMS system, that Dave Hemmendinger and his staff, Chuck Dunn included, will very quickly remedy it. Within days, they will remedy whatever the problem that's been found is. So if you can give them specifics of what your problem is, they either have a solution for you right away, or they'll be able to get you a solution pretty quickly. And they're very attentive to making this system work better. They've already come out with a second version. I've heard people say it took me 8 or 9 hours to do the refresher. I hope not. Because that says something about your level of preparedness, or else it says something about your level of thoroughness, which is not a bad thing. But the average, according to Dave Hemmendinger's statistics, is for version 1, took about 4.2 hours to complete the refresher, the LMS online. For version 2 that just came out beginning of September 6th, I think, it's about 2.7 hours. So they've improved it. They've reduced some of the key clicks, some of the interactiveness that was involved that people were finding annoying. They're refining it as we go along. So please have some patience and counsel your people in your regions to have patience that this will get better, and it's getting better already. And overall, I think it's been tremendously successful. So we're very pleased about that. And if you do happen to stumble across Dave Hemmendinger, give him a big hearty thank you, because he has really put himself out there to make this work. So I hope you all have a great day today. Enjoy yourselves and learn a lot. And thank you again for being some of the leaders in the Eastern Division. We appreciate it. We wouldn't be the division that we are without your involvement. Thank you.
Cal, thanks for making the time.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
Have a great refresher today. You've got good
All
weather
right,
for
thank
it.
you very much.
All righty. Let's take a minute. I'm running. Okay, so Kathy Newberger, who's supposed to be here today, broke her foot a day and a half ago. It's all kinds of pretty purple colors. So let's just all say hi to Kathy really loud so she can hear you. If she looks a little glazed, it could be the medication she's on. I don't blame her. It's really painful. Okay, let's talk about a plan for the day. Besides the fact that we're a little behind schedule. So we're gonna do some program updates. We've got a leadership panel. Wendy Arnio is here joining us, national board member. We all know and love Wendy, and we've got a couple other board members, hopefully zooming in, hopefully. But who knows with technology and people's schedule, but we're gonna have a chance to direct some questions at some of our leadership, beside Cal, couldn't do that panel. We're gonna take an extended, come back here. We're gonna have a coffee break in the morning. So if you want to pigeonhole Wendy and ask her questions that may be not something that the general group needs to hear, you can interrupt her coffee break. I give you permission. We're going to talk about the LMS system. Dave Hemmingdinger, who's the architect of the LMS system, is going to zoom in, and we can ask him questions. We're going to go over emergency action plans. Then we're going to do that cleanup and setup that I spoke about. We're going to do a group photo and then lunch. Photo first, then lunch. So we'll talk about that when we get there. We're going to go do 4 outdoor stations. I talked about that. We're going to return to base. Returning to base is the pavilion, the outside pavilion where some of us were eating last night. What? Oh, sorry, we're at a different pavilion. Don't listen to me. Okay, no worries. When we go out, guys, when we leave here, if you want to store any of your personal belongings in the lodge where we did the check-in and you got your swag, that's a fine place to leave them. But you want to, when you go to lunch, have your patrol jacket, vest, whatever, so you can look good in the photo, because it's all about looking good in the photo. And then have your field pack with you. Okay, we're not doing lunch till after the photo. We're going to come back. We're going to come back to the base. You guys are going to go to the lodge, drop off your cards, just like the OEC refreshers used to have little cards. They have station cards for you to each take around. Mark, you got one? Hold it up and wave it for me. Right. So make sure you get that filled out, and then there's going to be a basket to put them in back in the lodge. And then we're going to do a debrief and a raffle. We got some really good items. Some are worth more than $100 a piece. Then we're going to clean up the whole thing. And we're going to go up to the campground and have a cookout. So that is the plan for the day. Everybody good with that? All right, moving right along. If you're a Nordic master, come up here. Quick like a bunny, except in Mary's case. Just slow like a sloth. So I have to correct a couple oversights. We had a manufacturing issue, as do most organizations, but 2 of our esteemed newest Nordic masters, and one of which is not so new anymore, didn't and couldn't get their pins. So Zeke, front and center, number 14. Yes, sir. There you go, brother. So you unwrap it. I'll stick it on you. Carp, Matt Carp, also earned his Nordic Master this year. Number 15. All right. So I just want to acknowledge that publicly. It's a serious undertaking, right? Yeah, take that cable. It's yours. It is an undertaking, but it is very achievable if you put your mind to it. And these guys worked really hard to go through the process. And my hat's off to them, and I'm more than happy to have them on this esteemed group. Some people couldn't be here. Thanks. Go. We're behind schedule. All right. Special thanks to Butch and Mary for all they're doing today behind the scenes and helping out, taking pictures and registration and cooking and whatnot. At the coffee break. So apparently the wedding, we've been asked by the wedding folks who apparently have a very aged population, if you would be willing to move your vehicles deeper into the parking lot. So there's some spots closer to this part of the world so that the aged population of the, not that we're not aged, but apparently they've got walkers and whatever. So if you can help them out by moving your vehicles deeper into the parking lot, leave some spots open up front, they would be appreciative of that. Questions? All right, here we go. So what kind of fun are you going to have today? We got type 2 fun. Type 1 fun. You want type 3 fun. You want scars in a story, right? Okay. So do you guys know what we're talking about? Does everyone know what we're talking? So what's interesting is there's different categorizations of fun. This is part of your Con Ed, by the way, because it says Con Ed Part 1. But there's different types of fun that you can have and still get something out of it. My climbing partners and I used to rate stuff fun, easy, hard, right? What do you want to do today? Fun, easy, or hard? There's other types of fun. But the reason you want to think about this, especially as educators, is that we are playing games, but we're practicing for real life, right? Isn't that what we do, right? Whether it's OEC or you want to share my screen? I thought he was sharing my screen. Oh, I have to share my screen? 1 moment, please. 1 moment, please. Zoom, share screen. That one, share. How's that? Is that working? Let's hope. Okay. Yay. Something worked today. All right. This is why maps and compasses are better than GPSs. All right. So we're playing games, but we're practicing for real life. This is one of the things I want you to take away from today. This is one way of scaling your fun, right? So type 1 fun, it's like going out skiing. More's better, right? You're having a good time. Great. It's fun to remember. Type 2 fun, it could be a suffer fest while you're doing it, but when you're done, you're like, God, that was great, right? Yeah, I'm covered with mud and I've got some scrapes and scratches, but God, we could do that again next week and it'd be fun. And then there's type 3 fun, where it's not fun in the moment and it's not fun afterwards, but sometimes it makes a good story for the bar, right? But that's about it. When we gamify, when we think about something as a game, we want you to think about how it makes your participants feel, right? Do they feel like they were successful, right? Yeah, we got over the wall, or yeah, we built that thing, or we accomplished the goal that the facilitator set out for us. Yes, these are memorable words. So this thing, the joy of figuring it out, we've all done it, right? Whether it's a navigation problem or a climbing move or something, like there's that endorphin release when you figure something out. And if you can build that in, if you can build these things into your events, celebrating small successes. I talked about that last year, right? You celebrate the smaller successes, your students get positive feedback about what they're doing. And then they're more engaged, right? They're having a good time and they're learning. So this is a really complicated chart, and you can find that online. I'm going to give you the quick or the 30-second summation, but different types of fun, of different types of feelings, right? Right? Can you do this in a certain amount of time? Or how many times can you keep this thing in the air? Or how fast can you do something? These are not exclusive. That's the other thing I want to point out. You're not building an educational component that is only one of these. You can integrate all of these into it. Just depends on how you shape it, how you preload and how you debrief makes a big difference in the experience and the takeaways that the students have. Does that make sense to you guys? So the preloading of the experience and the debrief are almost more important than the experience itself, right? Because people talk about the F word. We talked about it last year, failure, right? You don't have to have anything be a failure, right? You can turn it into a, well, what didn't work and why didn't it work? And what can we do if we do this again? What can we do to be more successful, right? To be closer to meeting the objectives. Doesn't have to be about failure. You take away, there's learnings, right? Why couldn't I ski that run the way I wanted to ski it? Well, you keep dropping your uphill hand. So is there a drill? Can my mentor in skiing give me a drill that I can practice that will help me not drop my uphill hand? You know, so there's that feedback loop. Does that make sense to you guys? And you don't have to write a ton of notes. Sorry about that. Because we can put this slide deck up on Moodle, and you guys can come back to it, so you don't have to do it. Any questions about what we talked about so far? I'm kind of buzzing along here because we're only a lot behind schedule.
One administrative item.
Yep.
There's going to be a way.
We did that.
Oh, no. The vehicles.
We did that.
behind,
We talked about moving.
I have no business being.
It's okay. This is why there's layers of redundancy here to make sure that with my Alzheimer's that I'm not skipping things. Raffle tickets. So did everyone get a raffle ticket? No. Okay. So if you didn't get a raffle ticket, put up your hand until someone hands you a raffle ticket, because we have great stuff for the raffle. All right, Dave Childs, you ready? The backy button, the 40 button, and that's the laser pointer. That's the laser pointer button.
Okay. So, there we go. I'm now mic'd. Dave Childs, most of you know me. Chuck Boyd has still going to be remain very heavily involved in the Avalanche program. We also now have a new assistant, Josh. Stand up wherever you are. There he is in the back. He is standing. So that is the succession plan. So that's awesome to have that all up and running. We are working through and updating our online program. As many of you are aware, COVID was a thing, still is a thing. And we have also increased the depth and breadth of our Avalanche program per AAA guidelines. So now our 3-day program is 4-day program, and we are going to try to do it all online. So, and the amazing online team right there and many others are working on making this all go into Moodle. And we have done that, and we're in the process of updating that. So there's a core group of us, the IORs primarily, that are going through slide by slide, chapter by chapter, saying what works, what doesn't work, mapping it into the book, mapping it into AIM, to make sure that everything is cohesive and meeting the objectives. This team will get expanded out as we get the PowerPoint slides built. We are going to need to present this on camera and also have it reviewed. So many of you out there are very likely to get a little ringy-dingy saying, do you mind looking through these slides, looking for spelling mistakes, looking for things that don't make sense. So that will come along hopefully relatively shortly. My schedule's been stupid, as most of yours, I'm sure, but I'm really hoping come November, I'm hoping my work week goes down in about 3 days instead of 50 hours plus a week, so that I will get time to dive into this hard and heavy to try to make some progress. So this is the slide you're probably looking for. These are potential dates for avalanche programs. I assume the slide deck will be made available, or maybe yes, no? Yes, perfect. So if you take a snapshot with your iPhone and it comes out fuzzy, your finger was in the way, this should be available later on. These dates are pretty solid. I would say the Whiteface and Smuggler's Notch dates are probably pretty darn solid. We are hoping to add in 2 additional programs. All of you and many others have been requesting that we produce more programming, more programming, more programming. The problem is there's only so many weekends in a winter, and there are lots of other programs running. So conflicts, not only within National Ski Patrol, but within the greater world out there, are a problem for us to try to work around. So we're trying to find dates to, yes, answer your needs of more programs. Obviously, snow is also an issue. We actually have to dig in snow, which means we have to have snow to dig in. So that kind of limits our area. In addition to that, we have to do this in avalanche terrain, which puts us in exactly 3 locations in the Northeast. So we have lots of constraints we have to work around. So what are we looking at for classes that are really truly Eastern Division, avalanche programs? We're going to have one at Whiteface in January, Smuggler's Notch early February. We're going to have a second, we're trying to get a second Smuggler's Notch class in. Linda Helms is going to be looking for some help with that potentially. This class will be focused in on certifieds. We'll get the first slot. They'll be open maybe a week beforehand and then open to the general public after that, because we have the certified program getting kind of backed up because they can't get into class. We're going to be working on another Whiteface class, which will be focused in on search and rescue folks for, say, New York State Rangers and things of that. They had a where Eric Zahari will be heading that up, and we're still working through the dates on that. Obviously, there's a bunch of conflicts there as well. So what other stuff goes on? Well, we're obviously in need of a level 2 class. Snow has been an issue for the past couple of years. Chuck is in the process of building a house. So that's adding another level of stress to the whole situation. But ultimately, we're believing we need to head out west to run a level 2 class. And that'll probably happen every 2 years. We have ESAW coming up. I believe that's probably going to be November 17, 18, and 19. The first 2 days will be online. The last day will be in person. National Avalanche School, if you guys haven't heard of that, total kick butt program. So this will all be pretty much the didactic piece, and then there'll be field sessions afterwards, which I have laid out the dates for you there. Josh Worth will be going to that. Basically, there's a scholarship that gets offered, and well, you get most of it paid for. So get involved with Avalanche program to take part in that. ISSW will be next year, October, most likely. I'm hoping to get to that. I think, Chuck, you're planning on going to that as well. And then last but not least at all, any of you Avalanche instructors out there that want to run a level 1 mod 1 program, well, this online program we're building is meant for you. The idea is that it makes it very easy to run one of these classes because they do almost all the classroom portion online, and you guys can get them together for a relatively short amount of time and do a little beacon work and things like that. Do you need to be an Avalanche trained for that? You do not. So that means you can run this program anywhere, anytime. If you're looking to, you just need some sort of avalanche awareness program, things like that, that's for you, relatively easy to teach. I think that's the end of my slides. I tried to make it short and sweet. Any questions? Sweet.
Okay, my turn. for those of you who haven't met, Joni Porter, I'm the MTR supervisor. Okay, didn't want to overwhelm the audience. I'm not used to being mic'd. Usually I can just project, so I don't want to kill anything. So I have a few things. Don't have a schedule set up yet, but we're going to do a quick go around the room about MTR. My presentation is pretty much going over what happened last year, and
That's what you have.
that's all I had. I didn't even know I had a slide that looked like that. Okay, gotta look at my stuff. This is last year, right? This was at Shawnee. So anybody who was here last year, if you didn't get a chance to see this, there we are. And what were you wearing? And you'll know who you are. But we had a great turnout at Shawnee, and that was, you know, down in the New Jersey, Pennsylvania, right over the border. So that was real convenient. And
Thanks to Millard for the fabulous.
yes, where's Stu? Mr. Gillard, thank you. He is like quickly comes up with these photos for us. This was Mary McQueen's MTR course that she ran at Allegheny. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so we had another, this was Laurel Summit down in, it says East New York, but I think it was Genesee Valley or Western App, sorry, Western App. I'm still working on this whole where things are. Not Laurel, well, see, I'm doing my best. I'm working on it. So corrections are always welcome. But that looks like they actually had snow on the ground. Not fun. This was Jeff Sargent's MTR 1, 2, the MTR 2 at tabletop. Love that there's a sign in the background. So send me your photos when you do these things. Make sure there's a photo so I know where you are. This was Mount Greylock, right? West Mass, right? I'm good, okay. All right, so MTR 2, so if you were there, you know, there you are, commemorated for all time. This was an MTR 1 in New Jersey, which I know because that one I made it to. A lot of crossover at that one. There were a lot of people from the Alpine region, Alpine patrols in New Jersey who kind of got introduced to MTR, which was a nice kind of cross-pollination there. And a little bit of ice climbing. I don't know why the words didn't show up, but this is the MTR 2 that Jeff Sargent ran. Threw in some mountain travel and ice climbing. Little shelter building. Debris actually fell asleep in her shelter while she was waiting to talk about it. It was that comfy. And look at the leaves underneath, the insulation. Just keep that in mind for later. Some low angle rescue building, some search and rescue exercise prep, and some toboggan building, expedient toboggan building, which you guys will be doing soon. I don't know why all my words didn't come across when I sent it to you. They're all on there. Nights out, right? MTR 1, 1 night, MTR 2, 2 nights, AMN, whatever you want. And so for this season, the goals are we want to run some more courses. I mean, we had a lot of courses run last year after our hiatus was wonderful. And thank you so much to the IORs who stepped up and made sure that there were courses and we were back on track with meeting in person and giving people, you know, the ability to do an MTR 1, do an MTR 2. Hopefully we will continue that this year. And I'm going to be asking people what your plan is, and I'm going to be disseminating that information to all of you. So you're going to be looking for emails. Another goal is making new instructors. This was making a new Nordic master, but that was a great picture, so I figured to throw it in there. So our Nordic master was out already taking care of, or getting ready to go out. He wasn't here yet. No, actually, the Nordic master wasn't there yet. Patient was in place, and you know, we were all there for the long haul overnight, waiting for him to go find the missing person who was also injured. So we were having a lot of fun while we were, you know, hanging out, waiting for somebody to come and do all the hard work. But new instructors, that's what happened this last season. have 3 new instructors. So we have in the Genesee Valley region, we have Connor Walsh, who the paperwork got finalized in 2021. Connor's not here, but Pat Seva and Peter Felice were his mentors and facilitators. So they thank you to them for that. Central New York region, Nick Krelak. Thanks to Jeff Sargent, who really like pushed him through. I'm not sure who else was instrumental in him with, mentoring and reviewing. And in Western Mass, we had Rich Adamczyk, who's the most recent one. And he's been training for so long that he has mentors and backup out the wazoo. So Eric Zahari, Craig Garland, Jonathan Sheff, Dave Childs, Chuck Boyd. Those are all the names on his paperwork that as he went through, who mentored and helped him and reviewed him. So thank you. This is really, they're not here, the 3 new instructors, but to the people who helped them to mentor somebody, to be there and help them, help facilitate turning them into an instructor is so important. And some people might need that, a little bit of a personal invitation. Don't forget to do that, because we can blame Butch for me being here, because I would never have applied for this position had Butch not sent me an email and said, hey, why don't you apply? I think you might do all right in this. So it's, yeah, so if you need, just blame Butch. Okay, it's his fault. Right, yeah. So just saying, that. So just, don't be afraid. And don't invite everybody, because if you just do a blanket invitation, nobody takes that personally. But when you get that one-on-one, you can be gullible like me and go, what a good idea. If he thinks I can, maybe I can. So, just keep that in mind. This is what's going on right now in our division. This is every region and the number of instructors and the number of instructor candidates. I'm very optimistic about the number of candidates. So if anybody even says the words MTR, I put them on my list, and then they have to tell me, no, they're not interested. So as you can see, New Jersey's got a high number of instructors, but, and we also have a really high number of candidates. So New Jersey is pretty good, and we've actually helped other regions in the past and done MTR ones we did one up at Bel Air in 2017. Genesee Valley has a lot of instructors, but I don't have any candidates from Genesee Valley. So it's a strong region with a lot of good instructors, but so tap some of the people as they come through your courses. Northern Vermont, nothing. There are some people who are on the list, but they haven't taught in years, and they're not really active. So we have our
We're working.
Yeah. So we're working on Northern Vermont. We're working on Southern New York, on Southern Vermont, on Maine, because our one person, she's really, she's like kind of retiring from patrolling as well, kind of, sorta. But so we've got candidates that we need to get through the system so we can build these regions back up and have them have enough staff that they can run an MTR. So what I'm asking all of you, MTR instructors, is to perhaps we're going to be scheduling some events where we want to invite some of their candidates maybe to other regions to get them through the process, because we're not going to put together as an event for, we've got one candidate in Northern Vermont right now, but we're going to move her to, get her through the whole process and have her get invited to another region's event. So there needs to be a lot of discussion and a lot of kind of cross-pollination between regions, and we'll talk about the actual details, because that's more of a committee meeting than just a general report. But that's something that I want to, you'll get that email as well. So these are the regions, like I just said, that could use some help. So Northern Vermont, Maine, Eastern New York, Southern New York, and Southern Vermont. And this is just a list of all the course MTR 1s and MTR 2s that were run last season. So we had a really good roster of courses and people who took courses. So, I'm really happy with that. I hope you guys all are as well. So if you need a course run, maybe, some people don't run them because their region doesn't have a budget, or, they don't have enough equipment. Well, we have equipment that you can borrow, and I have a gear list. So, you guys can take a look at this later on, not right now. But we do have some Eastern Division, we've got some carabiners and pulleys and ropes and webbing and all of that stuff. And we have radios. We have radios, but we have navigation. No, we don't know if they're brand new. We don't know if we're lending them out yet. But we have navigation, we have compasses and GPS units that you can use, that we will work together to get this equipment to you if need be, if your region, if you want to have a course and you can't. But if you want to have a course and you just don't have the instructors, reach out to me and I will try, if you haven't already reached out to someone to run a course for you, and I'll put it out there and we'll see what we can do. Maybe we can create a course, or have like the New Jersey region did and went up to Southern New York and ran an MTR1 up there. Things like that are definitely already in the works. So if you're interested, I want you to, reach out and we can hook you up and you can be part of that. So that's the not enough instructors in your region point. So that's the gear. The lovely little dark picture, but that's just what's in our pack right now. Doesn't mean that's all that there will ever be, but I'm working on that. And that's the list of equipment, which we're not going to go over because time. And there were words on there that I sent to Rick, but they've disappeared in transit. So yeah, he thinks I talk too much. So blankety blank. And words appeared. Okay, so if you want to get the word out about your thing that you're running, right? Because why run something if you only have 3 or 4 people? Well, there's other people in other regions. Let's get them to your event if you don't have enough. So let me know. I'll put it on the calendar on nspeast.org. How many people go to that calendar and look for events? Please tell me, right? Everybody more, right? Do it more and let me know, and I will put stuff on there and let the other supervisors know, because we're the ones who get to put it out there. So let us know as soon as you have something, even if it's a dates to be determined or place to be determined, we can start it. We can start it getting rolled. Get it rolled? We can start it rolling. And last but not least, I started an Instagram page called NSP East _MTR, up to 122 followers, which it doesn't need to be out there for the entire world. It's for the Eastern Division and mostly for the MTR, the MTR Nordic, and Avi. I mean, we're all so intertwined. It's not even funny. We all of the pieces fit together and overlap. I mean, if we did a Venn diagram, there wouldn't be a lot that wasn't in all 3 programs. So if you are, what's that? Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so can anybody right now, real quick, I'm almost done, who is already planning an MTR level 1, MTR 2, I'm sorry, I'm using Abby terms, an MTR 1 and MTR 2, please stand up. My IORs who are already planning courses. So real quick, Chuck, what?
All right, so.
Myron, David, can you hear us now?
We can, Wendy.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Also, so I introduced you, Myron, to the group. David Hammerdinger's in the background. He's going to talk to you as well. So because David is joining us and is all things LMS, I'm going to not talk about that and let him address all his issues. Thank you, David. So with the departure of Chris Castillian as our CEO, the board has been working very closely with the office staff to make sure that the business is moving forward. We've had really good feedback from the office staff and great interactions. So things are positive. We're looking forward. We're not dwelling on past things, because we wanna keep moving forward. And the one thing that I want to stress to everybody to remind you is that as board members, first and foremost, we're forward and we're members. And so we know how things affect all of us as members. So we're pretty in tune with that, with the that we make and the things that we're doing moving forward. So just a reminder of that, because I think that's important. So office staff, we assured them early on that their jobs are secure. So we haven't had any turnover as of now. And we've recognized that the staff has been working really short staff for a number of years now. And a big focus of us with our budget this year is to make sure that the office staff has the resources that they need and that all of us need, so that they can do their jobs for us. So rest assured, we're moving forward, and things are moving along. As you probably also saw, the executive director position statement has been posted within a few hours after that was posted. We had 40 or so applications, so they're coming in. I think Cal said they're up to like 70 something now. Initial interviews are taking place, have started with our executive team to kind of sort through things, and we're actively working on that. So rest assured that things are moving forward on that front. Something you all may notice as instructors there'll be a DEI statement, and Myra, I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about that. In the instructor manuals that will outline the expectations that we're going to treat everybody nicely, and if you don't, there's going to be consequences. And also that as a student taking a class, there'll be expectations of you as well. So you may be seeing that coming up. As far as the social media stuff goes, I'm sure we've all seen a lot of the stuff that's out there. As I said, the NSP leadership has been trying to stay positive and moving forward. We are in the process of working with our communications director in the national office to get a campaign out there to better communicate with all of us, because we all recognize that that's a huge topic that a lot of people feel has been really lacking. And we all agree, and that's a big focus of ours, is to make sure that we're communicating better with you. I'm going to stop there, let Myron jump in.
Thank you, Wendy. Wendy really did a good job of summarizing the kind of the hot topics among the board of directors at the moment. I can provide a little bit of information, but before I do, I just want to check that my audio is still working well.
It's great.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, thank you. So as Wendy mentioned, we posted the position announcement for the next executive director, and started getting applications right away the next day. They're still rolling in. And even the better news is that there are quite a few highly qualified applicants, at least on paper. So of course, you can't tell everything about somebody from their cover letter and CV. So several board members have started the process of having one-on-one conversations with some of the best looking candidates. And we'll try to narrow down the list and come up with a recommendation to bring to the whole board for the next executive director. That's the number one item on our list right now. I think that just for the sanity of the office staff and for the efficient running of the organization, we need to fill that position quickly, and we need to do a good job and pick a good candidate. In my opinion, we need somebody who has not only the ability to manage an office staff, but we need somebody with budgetary expertise and the ability to align budgets with strategic goals. I think that's going to be really important for NSP over the next few years. Wendy mentioned something about the inclusivity statement in instructors' manuals. This is something the Education Committee came up with several months ago. And if you don't see such a statement in your discipline's instructor's manual, then talk to the National Program Director, make sure it gets there. This is, at the moment, it's a statement about instructors' responsibilities to conduct courses in a fashion that is inclusive and promotes a good learning environment. I heard Rick Chandler talking about that earlier this morning, and I think that's really important. I also suspect that most people in this gathering have at some point or another encountered a course in which the learning environment was not especially inclusive and may have even involved behavior that I call hazing. So we have a responsibility to our students, patrollers, and public to conduct courses in a more inclusive way. Education Committee right now is working on an addition to that statement that outlines students' responsibilities as well. So maybe you've encountered courses in which there's some student who's being a problem to other students, bullying or something like that. And we just can't tolerate that in our courses. Wendy also mentioned social media. Right after Chris Castilian resigned, there was an uptick in negative social media, especially through the Instagram account Alt National Ski Patrol. This is, of course, as Wendy said, I think we want to float above that stuff, but I also think that it's time for NSP to put out a statement about the negative social media statements. And so you should see within a few days a statement that comes out to all NSP members, and there'll be a separate but similar statement that goes out to our partners, like Subaru and Patagonia, about NSP's stance on the social media. I'll stop there, and I'll just see if there are any questions that people have.
Pretend you're on Zoom. My company is Ingersoll Rand, and so we're getting a lot of diversity and inclusion training, which is being met somewhat with a lot of challenge at the same time. And I'm not directly involved in this training, more as a recipient of it. And what I found to be most effective is bias training, which is, so it doesn't really single people out. It actually allows them to start to recognize their own bias. And it's a really great way to broach the subject, because when they pivoted to this bias training, they had a lot better results because people didn't feel like they were being singled out for their particular behavior. They were able to actually look internally at themselves and make decisions. So bias training is really important. And then really my main question is, how do we not get pressured by our partners to do things that we don't want to do with diversity and inclusion? Because very easily we can alienate a very large group that we don't want to alienate in the process of trying to meet objectives, which sometimes just aren't realistic for certain organizations.
Yeah, that is, first of all, I appreciate your remark about bias training. I think it's really important when we are trying to promote diversity and inclusion, that we not make people feel like this is all about what they're doing wrong. I think is very important to keep that discussion on a positive level. The question about our relationships with partners is an important one and a delicate one as well. I will say this, there's a person in the office, he actually works out of California, but he's on the office staff, and his name is Matt Mears, and he spends almost every hour of every day working with his contacts at our major partners. And I think he does a superb job of I'm going to say, negotiating with them over issues that arise on social media and issues that arise otherwise at NSP. And one good thing about Matt is when the going gets rough, he's pretty good about letting board members know, here's a problem I'm facing, here's something that we got to consider how to do. I don't think with Matt in his role, I don't think any partner is going to back us into a corner to do anything that we don't think is appropriate for NSP. But we do have to remain responsive to our partners if we want them to stay partners. So Matt's doing a great job of handling that balancing act.
And along those same lines, that we have really good lines of communication going on with the NSAA and PSIA and our other industry partners that we work with closely. We have ongoing conversations, give and take back and forth, and between Matt and those conversations with our other industry partners. We're in good shape right now. Other questions? John?
Myron mentioned up to my. Up to the left. You just stay standing.
Yeah. Hi, Myron. I'm just wondering, you mentioned that you're looking for a executive director who will align our budget with the organization's goals. And I'm wondering, what are those goals?
That's a great question. NSP is primarily an educational organization. We train ski patrollers and the public, and I think one of the goals is to have great educational programs. Frankly, I think our educational programs have for many years needed more support. As you all know, we had a dues increase this year, and that was primarily so that programs like the Avalanche program, MTR, Nordic program, OEC can have, working budgets. If you've been a national program director, Rick knows this. Those national programs at the national level have had pretty meager budgets, and that just does not really provide enough resources for the NPDs, national program directors, to promote excellence in their program. So I'd say that's a key idea or a key example of how we're trying to align our budgets with our strategic goals.
And there's been a significant reallocation of funds into our educational programs, such that there will be better support for our education programs this year. It's a tight budget year, But our focus has been to make sure that you as instructors in programs that we offer have the resources that we need. So hopefully you'll be seeing that increased support over the next season. Other questions? Come on up. One at a time.
Go ahead.
Just the microphone there.
First of all, thanks for appearing here before us. Oh, speaking of this, okay. Thanks for the illustration. Thanks for appearing here before us. My question is regarding the organizational chart that was recently posted to the Facebook NSP discussion page. One of the candidates for the board, if I remember correctly, her name is Michelle Karpinski from Central. She posted an interesting comment about that, saying that for an organization of NSP's size and sophistication, it's rare to have the executive director essentially just managing the paid staff, and otherwise the board is assuming day-to-day operations. I'm curious what you think about the proposal to switch to more of a model where the executive director has more day-to-day control, more like, say, a large corporation where the CEO is running things on a regular basis and the board is just chiming in more on a as-needed basis rather than day-to-day management.
So the executive director is in charge of the operations and managing the office staff to carry out the directives that the board of directors gives them. So the day-to-day stuff really doesn't come from the board. That's not to say we're not an active working board, because we are very involved in the not only the strategic objectives of the board, but there's some spillover into the high level operational status as well. But
Also comment on that.
yeah, go ahead.
So, Jonathan, that's a great question. I think it was January. They actually spent an entire day. The board did an all-day exercise, led a series of exercises about separating themselves from what I'll lovingly call micromanagement, and really trying to step back and do what most boards do, which is that longer range planning, policies and procedures, approval of bylaws and things, and to not be so lower level functioning of the organization. And Mark Abend led that exercise, but it was an all-day thing, and we broke into subgroups. And I think it was really valuable for everybody to sort of examine from both a program director and board members to look at how to best use your time. And I think that's kind of what your point is what should the executive director or CEO be doing, and what should the board be doing? And I think they are taking a hard look at that. And Myron, I don't know if you want to comment on that as well.
Yeah, I'd be happy to weigh in on that one. Of course, the board's function is to think strategically about the organization, and as Wendy said, make sure we have the right policies in place and a good strategic planning process in place. And the executive director's job is to run the office and also to make sure that we have good external relationships with the entities that we need to be well connected with. External director could also take on fundraising. That hasn't been a major part of the executive director's job to date, but that's a conceivable role for an executive director as well. I think the board tries pretty hard to stay in its strategic lane. there have been times when the board has waded in, and sometimes appropriately or necessarily, and sometimes inappropriately. So we try to stay in our lane though, and we've tried to, do a little self-reflection on how to behave. One thing that's different about NSP than a lot of organizations is that, the office staff, they're not the ones who deliver the courses, design the curriculum. They help us when we do that. They help patrollers and instructors and ITs and program directors. But it's really members who drive the activities of the organization, especially the educational activities. So to some extent, the board is going to be involved in that stuff, in the meat and potatoes of NSP's activities. That's different from trying to manage the office staff.
And I will add quickly to that question that, over the last few years, the office staff has been short-staffed, which severely limited in some regards their ability to get everything done. And frankly, reached out to different board members, to help out on a temporary basis. So, we are able to assist them when their needs arise. So there has been some opportunities there for the board to help out in recent years.
I'll give a concrete example of that. As Wendy mentioned, for a lot of 2021, the office was understaffed. And just a process like putting together the packet of materials for the monthly board meetings, that was something that the staff needed help with. And Liz Dodge, a board member, stepped in and offered to help and was integrally involved in putting together the packets for the board meeting. Ordinarily, board member would not do that, but at that time, the office staff needed some help.
Other questions?
There's at least one more question back there. I'm trying to time the end of this session with the coffee being ready. Oh, good. No, you got a little bit of moment too. Okay, you good? Anybody else? I mean, this is a really good opportunity to hear like from the mouth of the board. Everyone goes before the board. I hear it all the time at gatherings, and this is your opportunity face to face with actual board members. And they can also convey messages, not just answer questions, but convey messages back to the board at large. And so it's a good opportunity to take advantage of this. And obviously, Wendy's going to probably should stay here for a little bit longer if you want to talk to her one-on-one. Myron, I'm sure would entertain phone calls. He's in Laramie, Wyoming. Roach, exactly. Myron was kind enough as a Nordic Master to help with the Nordic Master exam we did in Breckenridge this year. Was out overnight at 11,000 feet till the wee hours, well, all night, and then got up and went directly to a board meeting about stock ticket testing 200s. He was up for a couple days straight. He's Myron's the real deal, and it's awesome that he would take time for us, especially on a day when he had to get up early because he didn't have to. So I appreciate you joining us. And obviously, Wendy drove 3 hours to get here. So these people really went out of their way for you.
And if you've ever seen Wendy in a large public setting, working in a room on behalf of the division and on behalf of the National Speaker Club, Wendy was fantastic.
Yeah, we're really fortunate to have both these folks on board. They both have my respect and appreciation.
And I just want to add one more quick comment. I spoke briefly about our commitment to making our communications better from the board down to all our members. But I would encourage all of our members as part of that communication link, if you have questions, or if you hear somebody with a question who's just griping about something, come up the line with it too. You know, we want to hear what your thoughts, your concerns, your needs, any of that is. And if we don't hear from you directly, then we may not, you know, be able to address those issues for you. So please know that anyone on the board is willing to talk with any of you. And I'm sure that division directors and region directors, all of those people along that line would say the same thing. So feel free to reach out. Thanks very much.
Byron, thanks again. You're welcome to hang out. You have any last comments?
Well, yeah, thank you for inviting me, and thanks for the questions. And I will just mention that although I really enjoy working with my fellow board members, it was more fun to be out overnight on the Nordic event.
Awesome. We're going to change things up a little bit. Dave Hemmingdinger's on the call. Coffee's not ready. So since there's a lot of coffee drinkers in the room, and I don't want to disappoint, I think we're going to bring Dave on, and we'll do the LMS discussion. And by that time, the coffee will be done perking, and we'll just flip things around a little bit. So Dave, I don't think I'm incorrect in introducing him as sort of the architect of the LMS system. How many people in here have done work on the LMS system? Okay, there was an assignment, thank you. There was an assignment on the Moodle school to go and watch the instructor course registration and management video training. How many people actually did that? Awesome, that's fabulous. Great, that means you probably have questions for Dave. So Dave Hemmingdinger, you're on.
Great. Thank you, Rick. Can everyone hear me? Thumbs up?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving me a little time on your agenda this morning. I'm currently at the Amari IT refresher this morning, and we've got lots of really great feedback from the team on the new learning management system. Let me start by giving you a little history. The National Ski Patrol had a prior learning management system. It was a product called Blue Sky, and it offered a very limited number of courses that folks could take advantage of, primarily in the ID space, but there were other courses available on that software. That software was not only costing the organization quite a lot of money, but the functionality of that software had a lot to be desired. The software was extremely old and had not been replaced for many, many years. As part of an effort to start working on replacing the infrastructure within the National Ski Patrol, specifically the systems that we all deal with on a day-to-day basis, the first piece of software that we decided to exchange was the LMS, the Learning Management System. The Learning Management System we're currently on was selected from 5 vendors. 5 different vendors were put through an extensive RFP process, and we arrived at a final decision of a product that not only would meet the needs of the organization today, but would allow us to expand upon the educational capabilities of the future. The product was focused on meeting our current needs, as well as becoming a recruitment platform in the future for all of our educational content. The system went live after a year and a half of work by many volunteer members and many folks within the national office. We went live on June the 1st. And the first content that was put up on the site was what we call the program landing pages. Each of the program directors had the ability to put content out on the website, primarily developed through the national office staff, to give the membership a broader view of the educational, of the programs themselves and the educational opportunities within those programs. So if you've not had a chance to experience the landing pages, I recommend highly that you do. It's amazing the breadth and depth of our programs through the NSP. The second piece of major content that went up was the content that was available, the prior content that was available on the old learning management system. We went through a process of converting all that content onto the new system for go live. And now we're well positioned to now modernize and revamp that content. And over the next few months, you'll see some major initiatives underway now that the program directors have a little more money to invest in our content, with a lot of revision of current content that's out there. And then the last piece, there was a very large group of individuals that were working on this year's OEC Cycle C refresher. I know that many folks have had issues with the refresher, and we do have a support team in place. A number of the volunteers, as well as the national office staff, have been working with members who are having problems with their OEC Cycle C refreshers. We have cut 2 versions of the refresher already based on member feedback. The original refresher, we call it version 1. We've had, as of 7 a.m. this morning, we've had 5,256 members complete version 1. We've got 266 members still in the queue to complete version 1. On version 2, as of 7 o'clock this morning, we have 1,263 members that have completed version 2, and we have 4,122 members currently in process on version 2. So we're getting pretty close to the 10,000 user mark from a OEC Cycle C refresher completion perspective. Version 1 of the refresher on average would take a patroller 4.5 hours, roughly 4.5 hours. Version 2 was cut down to 3.2 hours right now on average for the 1,263 that have completed it. So the main difference between our old LMS and the new one is we can make changes based on member feedback. I don't want to say instantaneously, but pretty quickly to address membership concerns. And one of the original concerns throughout version 1 was it was taking too long. So we were able to take out over 63 minutes between version 1 and version 2. We were also able to make version 2 slightly easier to use. And although there are membership that are having problems with version 2, it is a minority, it's a small amount. And we have been able to keep up with the support tickets and help those members in a pretty timely fashion. I do envision probably in the next few weeks, additional modifications to version 2 to help membership out. We've got some changes that we're going to make to streamline the DEI portion of the module, which is handled by the DEI folks. And we're going to make some adjustments to instructions and usability so that members can navigate through the system much easier. This is a very large system install for National. It's the largest and probably the first system in a very long time that we've replaced. And, you know, it doesn't come without its problems and its issues. But again, we've got 100% commitment by the vendor that we've purchased the software from. And again, we've got, you know, support staff that are helping members through the process. The last thing I will mention is this past week on Wednesday, we had 13 hours of system unavailability. And I believe we've been doing a very good job of keeping the membership abreast of the changes as well as the status of the LMS system since go live on June 1st. This Wednesday, we had 13 hours of what I would call system reliability issues or sustainability issues. The system was up and operational, but the performance was so bad that you couldn't use it. The vendor and the support team jumped right on board. And again, within that 13-hour period, we had the system back up and operational with no membership information loss. No one lost their place of where they were within the refresher cycle. And we've got the reliability and performance back where it belongs. As we had stated in the communication, that was partly due to the way we've got the system configured to match our current workflow within National Ski Patrol on the refresher side. And the vendor is now working with us to modify that piece of code, that workflow, so that we can prevent an accidental error from happening again. It was actually a member that tried to enroll almost the entire membership into one class, and that created a problem for the system. That is it in a nutshell. I have been acting as the original project manager for the system. I've been doing this type of work for over 25 years professionally. This was the 9th LMS that I've installed in my career. And again, I'll say for most of the membership, it has gone pretty well. For some of the membership, it has been frustrating and stressful, and we understand that. And again, we're now on a platform, a modern day platform that we can now modify and adjust to meet the concerns of the membership, as well as a platform we can now grow on, which is something we have not had at the National Ski Patrol from an IT infrastructure perspective for a very long time. So Rick, I am happy to answer any other questions that folks have, if folks want to ask questions.
Anybody have a question for Dave about the LMS?
You want to stay in front of the.
Well, we see it.
I don't have a question, but
Ron,
I have a statement.
Ron, TV, Ron.
We're supposed to stand.
Right there.
Hey, Dave, that staff has been really responsive. I am not good at new technology, and that staff has been right on it and really helpful. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Yeah, the staff there's 4 of us, myself, Chuck Dunn, Maddie Miller, and Hannah Walden. Maddie and Hannah are on the national office staff. They don't typically work the weekends. Chuck and I do most of the weekend work from a support perspective. We try to be as timely as we can in our responses. We try to be as patient as we can as well. And those issues that we can't handle, we let the membership know right away. We forward it to the national office. You all should know that all of this interaction from a support perspective is fully documented, as well as the emails that we get at the NSP Center for Learning email address. The ones we forward to the national office, we have a log of those going to the national office. Every Monday morning, Chuck and I meet at 8 a.m. Mountain Time with the national office to review where we are from a tickets perspective. So we're keeping an eye on those tickets as well. I can tell you that I have personally answered 547 questions since June 1st on the NSP Center for Learning website email system. And again, a couple of things I'll emphasize. Please keep an eye on the frequently asked questions and the documentation that we have out on the LMS right underneath the main banner. We're constantly updating that information. There's quite a wealth of the information out there. And quite frankly, I think a lot of members would go through a less stressful process if they just sort of read some of that up front.
Dave, no one else has a question. I have a question for you, Dave. On the instructor training module, the video quality is subpar, really, really hard to use. When I asked about it, I was told that it looked good, but when they encoded it into the LMS for the presentation, I guess it got downsampled or something. Is there a plan to fix that? Because I personally found it almost unintelligible.
So Rick, that should have been fixed this week. And I was going to ask if anybody attended any of the instructor training sessions this past week in the evenings, because we've been using all of the new graphics and videos this week.
Anybody?
It was fine. Okay, so as an early adopter, so to speak, as a guinea pig, yeah, there were definitely some issues and I mentioned it. So I'm glad to hear that that got remedied.
Yeah, and Rick, that's the point, right? In our old system, we never had the capability to update that stuff in a timely fashion. We couldn't. And the beauty of this is, based on member feedback, we're able to turn this stuff around pretty quickly now on the new system, which quite frankly, for a person that dealt with the old system for almost 10 years, it's
Right.
such a breath of fresh air.
So again, and anybody else have anything for Dave? I know he's actually somewhere else doing something else and he carved out time to be with us today. So anybody else have anything for Dave? Going once, going twice. Dave, any closing remarks?
NSP Center for Learning, if you have any issues at all, if you have any members having problems, get them to that email as soon as possible and we will address their concerns.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for making the time for us.
Thank you as well. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Good deal.
There are things that patrollers, a bad accident is probably the classic thing. But we need to look after each other, right? And the process by which that happens is much better if it's put in place before you need it, not when you need it, right? That's the proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance portion of the program. So the Eastern Division by far has led the way, thanks to Melinda and her team of people, created an amazing resource and a bunch of other material. Every patrol director should have gotten some mailings over the last couple of years. On the national website, on the Eastern Division website, there's a whole bunch of information and links for every patrol in Eastern Division on who to contact about who to call, who to contact. You want to establish the relationship for that support system before you need it. In Rick's fantasy world, someone would show up at you're on the hill or on the trail and say, hi, my name is Sally, and I'm a trained social worker and and this is what I can do with you, and I'm available to you should you need my services. And now you have a face and a name, and they know who you are and you know who they are. A lot of times it may be the same person that provides services to EMS and fire and police. Sometimes it's not, but you want to be ahead of the curve, not behind the curve when something bad goes down.
Right. And Southern Division just did this kind of training on patroller stress at their patroller conference. So I'm just putting it out there. It is very good to do this at your on-hill refresher. There may not be time during the OEC, of course, but during the on-hill refresher is a good time to introduce this topic and the cards, how to use them and so forth.
Right.
So check out the NSP East website under the safety program. And thank you, Oris, for putting a lot of that together and making, hey, don't forget about your safety programs and you can reserve a tent.
So our goal as a safety program is we're agents of change. We want to change people's behavior. That's really what we want to do. And you do it all as patrollers, right? You're skiing out of control, you're skiing too fast, put your safety bar down, all those things. You're trying to get people to change their behaviors. 20 years ago, how many people skied in a helmet? Right? Now it's the norm. Why? There was a shift in behavior change. It became an accepted safety practice. Same thing. So we're having conversations both inside the safety program wants to look at two populations, us and them, right? The us is, right, first rule of rescue, don't add to the body count. The second thing is your team, right? It's our team. And so we need to look after each other. And then when the season, this is the time to do that, get all those pieces in place, because once the season opens, we become very public focused. Does that make sense? So take the time now in the preseason, work on your resources for your patrols and your people. Right? They're us. It's us that we're protecting. And we want to have all that stuff in place. Yes, the neck tubes are great, right? But they're a conversation starter. The stickers are conversation starters. So you can go to somebody and say, hey, I saw you looking uphill, you did before dropping in, or you stopped at the edge of the trail. Really good job, thanks. Here's a little, here's a sticker. You can use this stuff a million ways. I won't spend time telling you how to do it. We've got people who will do that for you and help you figure out ways to have safety events or safety conversations. But it's not just here, have a neck tube and walk away. It's an opportunity to engage in a conversation and try to change someone's behavior.
Yeah, and feel free to talk to me at lunch if you have any ideas or questions. So thank you.
Cool, thanks. Kathy Fitzpatrick, who is also a member of this patrol, is now heading up the Eastern Division Safety Program. She's a slacker. She's not here today, so she's got a better offer. All right. Any other business before we get going? All right. Let's call. Okay. You're up after the coffee break. All right. Mike, go ahead, Mike. Yeah, we already. Does anyone want to talk about moving the cars? Show of hands. All right, so listen, we're gonna take a truncated coffee break. Let's be back at 10:30. 10:30, please.
Matt Karp and our Carlson will be running the sheltering station when we do our field work. So Matt, Eric, thank you for helping out with that. This year, every year we kind of focus on one thing. This year, we're really focusing on getting Nordic seniors developed. And one of the issues, one of the conversations is, I don't have a Nordic senior I can get to. My region doesn't do one. A Nordic senior can be run at the patrol level. And if your patrol wants to run a Nordic senior, and you got one guy, I'll come out and I'll get the resources to help you get that done. So reach out to me. If you got one woman, I'm coming myself. All right. Okay. And I will, we'll make it happen. Additionally, if your region is forming a Nordic patrol, we have resources. We'll help you there too. All right. What did I do wrong? Okay. Without any further ado, we are very fortunate that the National Nordic Director is a member of the Eastern Division staff, Mike Balk. And I'd like to introduce Mike Balk right now. And again, I'm walking away. That's it. I know. There you go.
So we have on the Eastern Division a different LMS that we've been using for a number of years called Moodle School. It is different. The other one is much younger. You've all experienced it for the coursework that you've done here. Avalanche has been using it for a number of years. OET has been using it for a number of years. We are MTR's using it now. There's a couple of courses on there, sections, topics that you can use for your MTR1 courses. And as we keep doing this, every year we'll have a new course that we can add to the MTR program if you want to use it for your courses to do pre-work. But that's not why the Nordic guys are up here right now. We are also planning on having a Nordic Backcountry Senior program in Moodle to help basically a flow chart, a workbook. These are the skills you need with the way that we've been teaching them, a little bit of video presentation for skiing skills. It's awesome because we have access to the PSIA videos, which I think was 2 years ago topic that we did. So we know we can use PSIA videos to help people see the skills in case they don't have clinics in their areas or just in preparation for the eval and other skills like that. So we're in the process of building this out. And it will look familiar to you how to use the online course. So what to expect at the clinic right now, and skills, what skills are needed, and how to do certain things, extended tours, fire shelter, etc. And we're going to add the stuff that we used for the AMN this year to that, shelter building and stuff and sleds. So this is a resource out there for you guys. It's in progress. So if you take a look at it, let me know if you don't have, we have to enroll them into this course, right?
They send me an email, I'll make sure we get them enrolled.
Okay,
So you send me an email, I'll get you in touch with Mike, we'll get you enrolled, we'll get you going.
how many Nordic instructors do we have? A whole bunch. Cool. So you guys let Phil know that you want to see this, and then you guys can help fine tune, tweak, come up with new topics that we need to cover and make sure that we're all on the same page. Any questions on this? I have, you've heard snippets. We're going to be using snippets today. I have a snippet I would like to share for anyone using the outhouse, the porta potty up by the campground. The filtrate, the air handling system in there works only when the lid is closed. So if it's smelly, put the lid down when you're done, and it'll not be smelly for the next person. You also have the benefit of not dropping things in. That's my little snippet. How to use a porta potty.
That's probably why I wasn't supposed to be up here. All right. At the Nordic station, we're doing actually the Nordic sheltering station. One of the things we really want to talk about when we're there is what makes a good shelter. We're going to ask you guys to really teach us and tell us the wisdoms that you have. A lot of Nordic seniors, for some reason, when we take a new Nordic candidate, we've been failing people on shelters. So that's one of the reasons we're actually doing this topic is because it has been something that has showed up at the Nordic senior evaluations where people will make something above, but the whole conduction, the thermal draw, the heat sink of the ground sometimes gets a little lost. So that's why we're doing this. And that's the objective of that. And if you go to the Nordic station, that's an opportunity. I'll be there. Talk to me about what you're doing with your Nordic program. Talk to me about helping out with this. All right. And don't worry, we'll work it out. I'll be at the station. Rick won't. All right.
You keep saying it's a Nordic station. Are shelters only appropriate in Nordic?
That's an excellent snippet. So the answer is no, right? So sheltering is an avalanche, sheltering is an MTR, except the Nordics do it the best. That was your point, right? All right. I'm out. It's back to you.
Our sleds only.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so we have some recent Nordic seniors. Brian Doyle, where are you? There he is. Stand up. So pretty awesome. So Nordic senior programs are happening, and as we're seeing more backcountry patrols, notice I use the word backcountry, not Nordic backcountry. We're seeing a blending of skill sets coming into play. I'm a little concerned about that blending being part of the evaluation, as I think all of you are as well. So something Brian Doyle and I have talked about amongst others and working with Mike Balk is we need, I think, to start moving towards having a committee together that will help drive the Nordic senior program so that the skills being tested are appropriate for the terrain you're skiing on. So anyway, I'm just going to throw that out there. I think that's something that Brian and Doyle and I felt was important. And I think Thunderbolt will be willing to pilot a test program. Should we kind of design something that has the skill sets we need? Yeah, but I think you're going to be part of this process as well, being at the national level. So I anticipate this coming down the road in the relatively near future. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that was my 2 cents.
Stay here. So, how many people did the emergency action plan little exercise?
Yeah? What? So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that. And really, if you want to sniff it, it's the what if, right? So it's a game, I know I've played a lot kayaking, right? We're running a shuttle and you start playing the what if game, right? What if something happens on the river? Because you definitely have limited resources. You have limited cell communication. Where's the takeout? What equipment is maybe, some people padlock some river through Stokes baskets padlocked in certain strategic locations. How can you exit that canyon? And it's the same thing for everything that we do. And as patrollers and patrols, we really want to think about that what if thing. So everybody's worst nightmare, right? Kid's missing. Now, did he just take an extra run? Is he in the lodge having hot chocolate? But mom's freaking out. And is there something going on, right? Is there a familial issue? Dad came in. Thanks. Dad came and took the kid because there's a dispute going on. There's a million what ifs. Chair lift. All right. Anyone ever have that happen at their area? Parking lots, icy, car crash in the parking lot? I have. Yeah, or right down, the access road to the ski area, and you could easily have this. And this unfortunately is becoming more prevalent. All right, active shooter situation. It's not just happening in city streets anymore. It's happening in malls and at restaurants and all kinds of things. So you just as a biathlon, yes, there's definitely active shooters at biathlon. I'd love that.
Hope so.
Yes. That would be so much fun. We need a biathlon program so bad. But as instructors, I also want you to play the what if game, right? What if you had, you're teaching inbounds, but what's the easiest way to get a student back to the base area? Have you thought that out? Ask yourself that question. What happens if a student is injured in a remote class? How are we gonna deal with that? How about an injured instructor? Because that changes. Yes, I know. Butch, right. No details. No details. We won't mention. I wasn't going to go into details. But you could be two instructors and 16 students, and then one of your instructors gets injured and has to leave. That changes things, right? You're responsible for 16 people for 4 days in sub-zero conditions. Roger's nodding his head, people who were there remember that trip. But we still made the best of it, but it was not easy. We deal in, especially up in the DACs, everyone's like, oh, I'll just get on my cell phone. How many people teach where there's no cell service, right? So what are you doing about that? What's your backup communication plan? I mean, just like today, right? These guys were in here till whatever hour of the night or morning, getting the sound system set up, and everything worked perfectly last night. And this morning, the audio shit the bed, I think is the technical expression. And the same thing. Oh, we've got radios, we've got this, we got that. And then something happens and the comms go down. What's your backup comms plan? Like, did you actually make a backup comms plan? So all of these things, what are your travel, like who knows your travel plans? Right? We made a plan to go out, but did we tell anybody we were taking a group of students and where we were taking them and when we thought we'd be back? And what's the action step? What's the thing that's going to trigger a rescue? So we took some people out into the backcountry at the DACs a bunch of years ago when Chuck was teaching a level 2 AVI. And we had an agreement. If you haven't seen or heard from us by 9 p.m., something's gone awry and you need to start organizing a rescue, which means put down the beer and pick up your pack, right? And at like 8:57, I think we were able to call. They were already getting their stuff together. And 8:57, we finally got cell service and said, we're out of the woods, don't come. But we had a plan. We had established a thing where we thought, yeah, there's a cushion if we're delayed, blah, blah, blah. 9 o'clock, that should be plenty of time. Well, at 8:57, I sent 2 guys to ski as fast as they could with 2 different company cell phones, because you don't know what the service is like, and said, call Chuck and tell him not to come. So we had a backup plan. And you need to think about that. What are your local resources, right? Again, if you teach at if you're only teaching at your home mountain, this probably isn't a big question. But if you're going somewhere to teach, what are your local resources? Oh, well, there's a Minute Clinic, Doc in the Box down the road from the ski area, but they're only open till whatever. But where's like a level 1 trauma center? Where's a level 2 trauma center? What do you have to do to get an ambulance to the parking lot or the trailhead? Or is that the best place to go from where you're teaching? Maybe the best place to meet them is on the highway that parallels the boundary of that area. So you gotta do the what if game.
Before you move off of this slide, we talk a lot about the backup plan. In the utility industry, refer to that the N-1 contingency, N-2 contingencies, right? So what does that mean? That means normally I would respond if I'm looking at winding trails in the winter time. We would go out with, say, a snowmobile to this spot right here where I've got a broken leg. Well, the N-1 is that snowmobile is now in for service. Oh, now what do I do, right? So the N-2 is, oh, by the way, power's down. Communications aren't functional, right? So you start thinking about removing pieces of your jigsaw puzzle. What is left? Can you fill those pieces back in? So that's the big piece of the game of the EAP, the emergency action plan, isn't just the fact of, oh, it's just a broken leg. What happens if I remove some essential component out of it? Now, how do we move on from that? It's one thing if you know what it is, but your patrol needs to know what it is as well, right? So that's the communication piece. That's part of that EAP. Now, do we need to go through? Maybe I'm jumping the gun
No,
here.
you're right on, spot on.
Maybe we don't feel like going through the computer and filling out all the paperwork associated with what do you got? You got it up there, yeah. So ICS and NIMS and all that stuff. It could simply be you sitting there with a Word document, typing away. Okay, these are all the radio frequencies. This is the fire service. This is where we're going to land the helicopter, things like that. Getting all of that information down in a simple Word document and handing it out at a refresher. That simple.
Stick it in your pack.
Stick it in your pack. Now, I would add there is benefit to working with your local emergency services, right? So actually making face-to-face contact with your fire department, with your ambulance service, talking to your local hospital and finding out, which I found out our trauma center isn't good at dealing with kids or brain injuries. So that kind of changes my flight plans, right? So if I have that broken leg way out here somewhere, and it turns out that it's a child who's also whacked their head, oh, now I'm actually going to probably think about flying that helicopter a lot sooner than I would have if it was an adult who just had a broken leg, right? So start thinking about your own community that you do have the local knowledge in and get better local knowledge. That's part of the EAP as well.
So for 1 second. So for for the OEC refresher this year, right? There's a couple of topics. They're doing incident command, right? This ties in directly with that. They're doing a little disaster drill and triage and things like that. But it's not far removed from what we have. They're also talking about burns, right? So burn victims maybe go into a different location than your regular hospital, depending on the severity of burns. So all of this is all interconnected. And really what we want to do is anyone know what that stands for? You practice is how you play. Right? How you practice is how you play. Mary, you had something you probably have a lot of time.
So one of the things we try to do about every 3 or 4 years on our patrol is to have a scenario for the on the hill where we actually take the patient from the woods, build a sled. We have the local EMS and the helicopter. And a lot of these helicopter services are totally willing to come to events like this if you give them advance notice, because most of them are on standby. You know, when I worked the helicopter, we were there 24-hour shifts and had nothing to do if there was nothing going on. So It's dependent on weather, but you know, something that you can think about incorporating into your on the hill is how we do it. So it's middle of winter, we've got the ambulance on standby, all the players come into play. So we're in a state park. We've got the state park police there. We've got the sheriff's department, anybody that would be involved in that.
And who's in charge is a big question for some of these things. right?
Oh, they all are. Just ask them.
The guy with the biggest belt buckle's in charge, right?
Yeah.
One thing you find out real quick is we're probably not.
Yeah.
The one thing is ski patrol that I've seen historically over 30 years and very allocated is that we. For the folks at home.
Can you hear me? One thing that we as ski patrollers tend to act as is we are in charge. The reality of it is we shouldn't be deciding when to bring law enforcement in, but how soon to. We don't decide whether somebody flies or somebody rides in the back of an ambulance. That's up to us to provide all the available information to 911, bring them in as soon as possible. They make the decisions. I've seen ski patrollers put in the back of police cars because they had the attitude that they were in charge. We have to recognize that we are a support to the edge of the property. If there's an accident in the parking lot, we need to identify local EMS, law enforcement, and identify that. We can't assume. In the engineering business, we have a way of breaking up assume. And the reality of it is don't expect that we have bigger anything than anybody else. We have to identify our position. That's what NIMS does. That's what NIMS teaches us. And we have to remember who we are, what our position is, what support role we have with respect to search and rescue. Nobody's going to discount in law enforcement or search and rescue is going to say, you're not qualified. Of course, they're going to ask for our help, whether it's extrication, whether it's bringing people to the scene. We are there as a support tool. We have to recognize that and bring in people as soon as possible and don't say, we will take care of it. That's perfect. Spot on. Anybody else? Anything they want to contribute to the thing? So to try and bring everything full cycle, right? And why we're doing what we're doing the way we're doing it today, and why we're interested in snippets is this, right? It's the same thing. We're all used to this with OEC, right? Oh, you got to be really good at putting a traction splint on, right? Why? Why do we have to be good at putting a traction splint on? No. Why? You got earplugs for screaming. Say that again, Gabriel. Shock, right? Shock's what kills your patient. Shock is what kills your patient. They don't die from a broken arm. They don't die from a broken leg. They die from the shock from internal bleeding, right? You got to figure out what's going to kill your patient in 40 seconds, 4 minutes, 40 minutes, 4 hours, and 4 days. There's a difference. You have to be, and we're all aware that shock kills our patient, and we're all aware of the golden hour. And so things are time critical. If you're building a backcountry sled to transport an injured person, things have gone bad, right? Because they can't ambulate. I'd rather walk through the night with a broken arm than hole up for the night, be cold and miserable. Does that make sense? When you're moving, you're generating heat. You're going to get out at 4 a.m. instead of the whatever time you thought you were going to get out, but you're out and you didn't stop and you didn't get cold and you didn't, do all those things. So we're cognizant of time. The thing is, the consequences of failure here become great. You're rigging a mechanical advantage. Why are we really doing it? Right? We're not playing games anymore. It's an oh shit moment, and we actually need mechanical advantage. It probably means the consequences of failure are high, right? If we're actually doing this in the real world. Does that make sense to you guys? So the snippets that we're talking about, the being really ruthlessly efficient and good at what you do, come into play. because you can't go back and say, oh, wait, let me get out that little manual and look and see how I do. I mean, you can, but you're burning time. If your equipment fails, if your rig fails, if your shelter isn't efficient, and you're fighting hypothermia and a shocky patient, and you're waiting for that evac, and you've decided that this is the best treatment for this patient, right? Why build a shelter? Why are we building a shelter? You know, and is it just for me? Is it for me and Zeke because we took too long, or did he step into a gopher hole or, you know, something and bust up his leg and he can't ambulate? And we make a collective decision. The best thing is to hunker down for the night, me provide first aid and keep him warm and fed and everything. And then at daylight, someone's going to come in and get him out. Right. So that may be the thing. Maybe decide that I'm not going to drag his big ass out of the woods because he's too big. You have to understand the why. And again, you need to be good at execution.
Before you move off of this, I want to talk real quick to this point right here. And that is, planning is awesome. However, you need to poke at that planning as well. What do I mean by that? That cliff edge that you've trained for, that you've got your low angle set up for, or you've got your belay rope set up for. Have you been out to actually look at it? Do you know where your anchor point is? Have you already established an anchor point? Have you tested that 60-meter rope to see that it makes it to the bottom? So that's a big piece of the EAP, is actually poking at it, getting out into the field, boots on the ground, and verifying that what's in here actually matches what's out there. That's huge.
I think that's it. Anything about the EAP. I didn't want to spend a ton of time on it. You're all smart people, but I do think it's important for us to be really cognizant and use that pre-planning thing, whether you're teaching a class or you're working at your local area, developing that stuff. You know, I can tell you that when we run AVI programs, we've had students fall and get hurt, have head injuries. We've stashed sled building material at a site so that we could evacuate someone on a sled if we needed to.
Just one point in NIMS, sometimes you'll see EAP referred to as IAP, Incident Action Plan, as opposed to Emergency Action Plan. So those two terms are used interchangeably.
Thank you.
And having the right phone numbers on a piece of paper is a godsend, or at least in your phone is a godsend, right?
It's a living document.
Yes.
Change. And every year it needs to be updated. Things change on that. So whether it's an IAP or EEP, whatever you want to call it, it's a living document. It needs to be changed every year. Someone's got to look at it every year.
Right. I think that's, and the, you know, running through the scenarios, it's not just about training. It's did our idea work? Is there a better idea? Is going down easier than going up? Million things. Anybody else got anything for the greater good? Whoo, doggy. All right, here we go.